Hello, I'm Shawn Kent Hayashi. In this video, you'll learn about emotional intelligence, what it is, and why it's an important competency if you want to become a star performer, grow to the next level, or perhaps become a more inspiring leader. I am an executive coach and a high-performing teams consultant. I work with organizations of all sizes, from small family-owned businesses and entrepreneurial startups to industry-leading organizations. I help leaders and teams become high-performing together. My team has identified 25 competencies needed for leaders and aspiring leaders to grow, thrive, and lead collaborative, innovative, resilient teams. Today, we're going to cover the competency of emotional intelligence. You'll learn about the 7 core emotions and the 5 skills of emotional intelligence. We'll also talk about how to begin growing your emotional intelligence today. Let's dive in now. When I first decided that I wanted to develop expertise in emotional intelligence, I decided I was going to create an emotions dictionary. I began to track every word in the English language that I thought had some connection to emotions. Obvious words like anger, love, fear. When I ask audiences today, how many words in the English language do you think have an emotional component to them? Somebody inevitably shouts out, all of them! And they're right. Different words trigger different emotional experiences in us. Right now, what I want to share with you, though, is that over time and as a result of working with some PhDs in emotional intelligence from the University of Pennsylvania, I learned that there really are 7 core emotions: love, joy, hope, envy, sadness, anger, and fear. Each one of those emotions has a different chemical marinade. So in other words, when you're feeling passionate, excited, joyful, you're in a particular, unique chemical marinade. But when something triggers you and you shift perhaps into feeling sad, you're in a different chemical marinade. Now, we could also say that each of those 7 core emotions has a different vibration level. Think about this for a minute. Think about the last time that you were feeling really great. You might have described it as walking on cloud 9, the sunshine all around you, just joyful, bubbles, whatever comes to you. When you're in that chemical marinade, don't you feel lighter, freer? Take a moment right now and sit as if you were in that chemical marinade. Now, I don't really want you to go to fear or anger, but you could reflect back on a time when you were in fear or anger, and what you'll notice is that you probably felt denser, tighter, constricted even. Begin to notice the distinctions in yourself between the core emotions. So, love. Now, there are probably 50, maybe even 100 other words that we use to describe that highest emotional vibration state. See if you can track the words that you use in your own language when you're speaking to people to describe that state for yourself. Love, joy, hope. When you're in those marinades, all is well. If only we could stay there all the time, right? But the reality is the other emotions, envy, sadness, anger, and fear, they also help us immensely as well. And when we begin to learn how to use them, we're no longer afraid of them. In fact, we can then control our own emotions. Let's dive now into those 5 competencies and talk about what each of the competencies looks like and how you can begin to develop them in yourself. The first one, self-awareness. This is knowing which of the 7 emotions am I in right now. It's understanding what triggers you and what you often do with those triggers. So, sadness. When you're triggered into sadness, chances are you're feeling like you've lost something. Sadness is a really useful emotion to help us understand what gives our lives meaning. When we feel like we've lost something, that's a clue about what really is meaningful to us in our lives. The loss of a loved one, the loss of a dream, a job, something that was important to us. This helps us to know. Now, if we can begin to learn how to process ourselves through that sadness, that's moving into the skill of self-regulation. But we have to have the self-awareness first in order to know, oh, I think I need to regulate myself here. When I'm coaching people one-on-one, I ask them to begin to identify at least 3 times a day randomly, what are you feeling right now? Over the next 30 days, I challenge you, keep an emotional intelligence journal for yourself. In your emotional intelligence journal, 3 times a day, track what am I feeling right now? And begin to notice the symptoms, the mental thought patterns, as well as how you're feeling in your body. All right, once you've become self-aware, the next competency that you will need is the one of self-regulation. This is our ability to ask ourselves really great questions so that we don't get stuck in an emotion, but rather we're using it to inform our actions. What do I mean by that? When you notice yourself feeling sad, blue, a little down, ask yourself, what is it that I'm feeling like I've lost? What would I like to create? What's missing? And what's the meaning? What's the value? Why is that so important to me? How could I add more of that into my life? How could I honor that experience? And then begin to take action based on your own answers to these questions. Sadness is one of the emotions that comes in waves, and we need to make peace with that. We need to begin to see sadness as a useful way of guiding our lives. All right, let's look at anger and fear, because those are 2 of the other emotions that can trip people up, and sometimes people get stuck in them. Have you ever met somebody who seemed angry most of the time or afraid? We don't have to live like that. I mean, it's knowing how to self-regulate when we catch it. Anger is a signal that something has crossed our boundaries. And so the moment you notice that flash of anger in yourself, the best thing to do is ask yourself, what is it that crossed my boundaries? It may be that someone else, something, a situation, or maybe even myself, that I crossed my own boundaries. But first, identify that. And then think about, who do I need to talk to clean up this boundary violation? What is the request that I need to make in order for us to move forward in a better way? It might be that I need to ask someone to start to be on time for meetings. If I'm self-regulating, I don't have to come out sideways in anger at them. Instead, I can say, going forward, what would need to exist for us to be able to start meetings on time? This is using the emotion to inform my action. Anger, really useful, particularly when we need to identify what's crossed our boundaries and how to move forward with it. Now, fear is a different type of emotion. When we're afraid, we often get shut down, stopped, stymied in our path. What can we do then? What are the questions that we need to ask when we're self-regulating? Fear has 2 faces. One, if I'm doing jumping jacks on the edge of a cliff, or if I'm going 80 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour zone, I want to have that flash of fear. I want it to slow me down, stop me so I don't do something stupid. Do I want my son to be fearless? No, actually, I don't. I want him to have that spark, that moment that says, wait a minute, this could be a really stupid thing to do and I'm going to stop. If we catch ourselves feeling afraid, the first thing to ask is this something I need to stop doing? Chances are good that it might not be that. If it is, it's as simple as stopping. But if it's not that you need to stop something, it's probably that you're being asked to do something you don't know how to do yet. We live in a society that sends us messages all the time that you're supposed to already know how to do everything. You're supposed to know how to use that software package. You're supposed to know how to solve this complex problem. Not realistic. We have to learn new things. And so it's not uncommon that when we need to learn something new, we feel afraid. But if we can catch that and ask ourselves the question, what is it that I'm being asked to learn how to do? Do I want to learn how to do that? How do I learn best? Do I like to read a book? Do I like to watch YouTube videos? Would I like to talk to somebody, be coached by somebody? Find a path that will teach you what you want to learn in a way that works for your learning style. This will help you overcome that fear. Many surveys say that people's number one fear is the fear of public speaking. In my book on emotional intelligence, I lay out a path, a plan to teach people how to be great at presenting. When you overcome that learning hurdle for yourself, that fear, you'll realize you can overcome anything. Self-talk is so important because the chemical marinade that tees up fear is the same chemical marinade that tees up excitement. What makes the difference, though, is what we label it. If I label it as, hey, I notice myself being excited here. The butterflies are flying and I'm getting them into formation. We're going to do much better in our performance. So we talked about self-awareness, knowing what I'm feeling in the moment, and then self-regulation, being able to ask myself the right questions so that I can move forward, informed by what I know about my emotions and taking the right actions. The next competencies that relate to emotional intelligence are motivation, empathy, and social skills. Let's look briefly at each one. Motivation. When I know what my own strengths are, when I've been self-aware enough to notice what I'm passionate about, then I start to raise my hand for assignments and projects that will play to my strengths. When we're not motivated, we're typically asking ourselves or feeling like someone else is asking us to do things that aren't aligned to our natural strengths. Empathy is our ability to identify what the other person might be feeling in the moment. Empathy is when we're able to spot what the other person is experiencing, feeling, and we're able to inform our conversation with them. I might check it out with somebody. If I notice somebody's coming out sideways, snarky, snide comments, those kinds of things, I might say, hey, I sense something's off today. What's crossed your boundaries? Now I'm asking them the questions that help them process through the emotions. And empathy doesn't mean that I go get in the sandbox with them. I don't have to feel what they're feeling. If somebody's feeling angry, I don't have to feel angry too in order to show that I'm being empathetic. Instead, what I need to do is acknowledge where they are. And when we have really high emotional intelligence, we're able to ask the questions, help the other person process their experiences, and then move forward. The next competency in emotional intelligence is social skills. And when someone has this competency, they're able to identify big, hairy, audacious goals that inspire them. And they're able to get a group of people, a team, to come work together on those goals. People who have high emotional intelligence build inspiring, focused teams because they know how to engage people in meaningful ways to keep the action going. So building emotional intelligence is, in my opinion, the foundation skill for great team contribution and leadership. I strongly encourage you to take on the skill of emotional intelligence as one you want to master. If you would like guidance, direction, and accountability in growing your own emotional intelligence, or your whole team's emotional intelligence, I'd be delighted to talk with you. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, a like, and subscribe to our channel. You'll also notice that little bell. Hit that, and you'll be notified every time we produce a new video. To learn more about the Professional Development Group, please check out our website. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one.